Hi and welcome to PowerÄgg. For this video we will look at transforming log data. We'll try to find a way of using import query mode with query folding enabled versus direct query mode. Let's have a look at how we can accomplish some great log data reporting. Alright, we will be creating the following report, a basic report with two tables, one at the top and one at the bottom. The table on the top is the data in its raw format. It's showing the data how it is in the database. This case is an SQL local server instance I have on my machine. And at the bottom we can see the transformed data. Now, what is the transformed data? Well, the transformed data is the information about a certain product, such as the name, the product model, and so on, together with the latest state or status that the product is in. Yeah, at the top we can see in the raw format how the system is providing a new row for each status update, yeah, based on time. But it doesn't provide us with the rest of the information about the product. We only have the product ID. But what we want is we want a table with unique rows for each product ID, where we have the information, the basic information about the product, together with the status update. So let's have a look at how we can accomplish this. There are different ways of doing it, and we're gonna have a look at which one we like best. All right, let's have a look at what we want. We have our view requirements. These are the requirements that we want all the information about a product together with the latest status it is in a simple table. Then we would probably have to do this by transforming the data, combining and grouping the data. And we definitely want query folding on import mode, yeah, for performance purposes. And because we are dealing with log data and it is so much data, it might be a big data scenario, we would also like to test direct query mode to see if there's any way of doing this and having direct query mode. All right, now that we have our view requirements, let's have a look at what we need to do to get to that view. So this would be transforming our data, and we would first have a look at the import mode. In the import mode, we can either use the query editor and Dax to achieve our goal and have query folding enabled. In this case, we will see later why and how. And then we have the scenario of using the query editor together with some native SQL code where there's no query folding because we're using native SQL. And we will see how we try to enforce query folding using some SQL and using some mQuery. But it will not work, and we will see why. And then finally there will be the direct query mode, where we used SQL Server to create a view with some SQL and then query the data directly and have no trouble going through some DAX and some query editing and transforming the data, which could potentially be the best practice depending on what you like best. All right, so let's have a look at the first solution, the using query editor and Dax with some query folding in the import mode. All right, here we are in Power BI. So let's get started with the first approach. Let's have a look at the raw data first. We can see that we have the product ID. We have the rows with missing data except for the status update, which is the log data, and then we have a row for this product with all of the actual information that we need on top of the latest status update. So let's go ahead and click on transform data in the home ribbon so that we are in the query editor. Let's have a look at the raw data table. Okay, this looks good. So the first approach would be to duplicate this, filter it down to all the status data, duplicate that again, group by the max state that we have for the status update, and then make a join on the base table, retrieve all the data that we have on the base table, and unselect null. And I will show you all this in a second. And then we go back and use some DAX with a lookup value where we can make a lookup value based on 2 columns, and that way we can retrieve our latest status. So let's go ahead and duplicate this table, this query, sorry. Let's rename this status, because this is the product status log data data, sorry. So let's go ahead and select the columns that we want, which is only the product ID, the date, and the status. Click OK. Then we say we do not want anything that's null. I only want products where there is a status. Yes. So let's duplicate this again. And this time we will call it group by max. So we will do exactly that. Let's go to transform, group by, make sure the product ID is selected. Let's call the new column, we will create max date. Let's go ahead and select max and use the date status update date field. Click OK, and there we have the product ID with the latest date. Alright, that looks good. So let's now get all the other base data that we need. We'll go back to home, go to merge queries, and select the base table that we have. Use our primary keys to create the relationship, and we want a left outer join. Okay, this will now multiply the number of rows we have. Again, like we saw in the raw data table, because we have multiple product IDs in the raw data for each unique product ID that we have in this table, in this query we created now. So let's click OK. Let's expand this, and again this will now create more rows. So let's go ahead and select all the information we need about the product, except the ones that we have already. Click OK, and now, because this is not good, we want to get rid of the null values. Okay, great, and now we have a table with the product ID, the max date, yeah, and our so on, and all our information. And let's go ahead and let's get into the step where we expanded. Oops. And let's undo this and let's expand again, because I do not want the original column name as a prefix. Okay, I want this to look nice and clean. So let's go ahead and select the fields again that we don't have, and then let's get rid of null. Okay, perfect. All right, that looks good. So let's load that into the Power BI desktop front end. So let's go ahead, click close and apply. This will now load the table from the SQL server, the query, into front end. Now we have 2 tables. That looks good. So let's have a look at what we have. Let's select the middle table. Let's go ahead and select the group by. So at the top table we have the product ID. So let's go ahead and select product ID. Then we have culture ID, which is nothing else but the language it is in, the name of the product, the product model, okay, the date, so the max date. Let's go ahead and format this so that it is a little bit more international, because I'm based in Germany. Okay, let's go ahead and make this an actual date, not a hierarchy. Okay, perfect. And now we want the status. Okay, so pretty straightforward move to get the status. We can use a calculated column with a lookup value, and we will look up the value on the first duplicate we created, which has all the status data. So let's go ahead and click new column once we are in this table.
and let's call this status and equals, and let's go ahead and use lookup value, and what we want to look up is the status. So we are going to go to the status table, get the status data, and we are going to search the product ID. This is the first column we will search by. We'll make sure that the product ID is the same as the product ID from our group table. And then we have the option in a lookup value to use another field, which is what we were missing in the query editor. We couldn't make a join based on two fields. We're not using SQL in this case, so we have to do it by DAX. And let's go ahead and select the date, because of course this value has to be unique. Okay, we cannot have a status with a duplicate date. That doesn't work in this scenario. Okay, the date has to be unique for each status. Okay, and in log data this wouldn't be a problem, because we would have a date time field, and then in the date time field it is so precise that you can never get the same, you get a status change in the same exact time as the one before that. So in that case it will always be unique, which is perfect. So let's go ahead and select the date on the status update and use the date that we have here. Close the bracket, hit enter, and hope this works. Okay, that looks good. Let's add this to the table and let's have a look at what we got. We have for product 995, we have the 24th of February and we have published. So let's go ahead and have a look at the top 995. The latest date is, yes, the 24th, and the latest status is published, and we have, as you can see, the product model name and all the information. So this looks great. This is definitely a possible solution. And let's have a look if we are query folding. Let's go back into the query editor and go into the table, and let's right click filter rows, and yes, we can see native query. So this is a native SQL. So yes, we have query folding because we can open at the last step the native query window, and the same for the status. Let's have a look here. Yes, also here native query. We definitely have query folding. So all the transformation, all the stuff is it's not loading all our data into Power BI and then transforming it. Yeah, we're already doing this on the server side, and that's definitely good for performance purposes. All right, let's have a look at the second option of doing this. The following is the strategy. We will create a new primary key by combining two columns, and this would be the product ID column and the max date column. This is basically, we're doing the same thing we did in the front end with DAX. However, we're trying to do this in the query editor so that we don't have any performance issues in the front part of Power BI desktop. So let's go ahead and try to create a new key out of two columns and then make a join and get all the latest status data from the status table. All right, so first thing first, create a nice space. Let's duplicate this. Let's call this with primary key, and we will go to we go to add column. Add a new custom column and call this primary key, and I'll just copy paste this. This is a text combine. We are first formatting the product ID as text, and then the status date as text, and then we're combining the two. if I would do this step before I do all of the transformation and all the query steps that we have here, I wouldn't have to I wouldn't have I wouldn't have to undo the formatting. Okay, we have an error here, so let's go ahead and have a look. I chose the wrong field. This was for a copy paste error, so I will take this away, choose the max date. Okay, that should work. Okay, perfect. So we now have a primary key. Okay, this looks good. This is 995 for the product ID, and then we have the max date. That looks good. Now, to do the join, we definitely need this primary key in our status table to look up the status. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. We go to add column, custom column, call this primary key as well, copy paste this, and in this case the copy paste is right because the field name is the same, so it works. Click OK. Perfect. Now let's go back. This is a bit confusing, I know, but stick with it. We will go back to the product status log data that we grouped by max, where we did the join and we got all the base data. Now we have the new primary key, and using this new primary key we will create a join with the log status data where we also have the other primary key and get the latest status update. So transform is what we don't want. We want home merge. Yes. Then we choose the status data. We go to the right, choose the primary key as the join, and we want a left outer. That's fine. And we click OK. And now we expand this. Again, we don't want the prefix, and we only want the status. And perfect, this works. And let's go ahead and load this and compare it with the other data we have and see if it works. So it will now hopefully quickly load the data from the SQL server, do all the transformations and the queries and so on. All right, we have our data loaded. So let's go ahead and select the bottom table and let's expand this a little bit. Okay, we have the product status log data, status group by max, primary key. Okay, this is the table we named, yeah. And let's see what we have. We have the product ID, we have the culture ID, then we have the name, product model, name, product model, the max date. And again, I need to reformat the date so that it's a bit more readable. Let's go ahead and unselect the hierarchy. Perfect. Max date, and now the status. And voila, it is perfect. We definitely have the same data as at the top. If we go line by line, we can compare it. But yeah, this is the same result as we have before, and we're not using any DAX in this case. Let's see if we have query folding in this approach. Let's open up query editor again. Let's go to the max primary key, right click, and unfortunately no. Let's do a step. Let's add a step, and we have lost the ability to query fold. Okay, let's have a look. There's no more. After this merge, there's no native. Yeah, after we added the custom column, of course we don't have any more query folding happening, because this is happening in Power BI. Okay, that's cool. That definitely, if we're dealing with big data, is going to be a problem. We're using import mode and having to import millions and millions of rows of log data, and then having a duplicate table with all the statuses and so on. That's not an ideal approach if you don't even have query folding. So This is not the best solution. But anyways, let's have a look at another way of doing it, which includes using a native, an SQL statement when we create the query. Let's go ahead and have a look at that. All right, the next approach is to use query editor and a native SQL statement where there's no query folding, and we will see what will happen if we try to enforce query folding using some mQuery, and see if it works then. We'll see if there are any limitations and so on. But yeah, so let's go have a look and see what we can do with some SQL in the query editor. So let's go ahead and select a new query, and this will be again from the local SQL server I have, and there's the data already in the database, so I'll use SQL Server Database. This will be local host, and the database is, I believe, Adventure. Let me have a look. Adventure Works. Yes, it is Adventure Works 2019. And now we want import mode advanced, and we can here enter an SQL statement. Now this doesn't have this isn't the most user-friendly way of working, because in this we don't have any IntelliSense or anything like that. So all we can do is copy paste stuff really into it that we created somewhere else, or use whatever Notepad++, Visual Studio Code or something. Anyways, already prepared this SQL. It will be available on the blog. You can just copy paste it if you want it. Anyways, I'm not going to get into details how the SQL does the same thing as we did before, where we have, let's click OK just now. Yeah. So we can have a look at the data. That looks fine. It does the same thing. It leads to the same result as before. Where we have all our data, and we have our latest status with the latest date, put the description in front of it, and our product ID. So we get the same result using SQL. Okay, this is nice. However, there's one downside. Let's have a look if we have query folding. And let me enter a step, and let's right click it. And no, because we used an SQL statement in our query, we no longer have query folding. But we can try to enforce query folding. Okay, so for this we have to go into the advanced editor. Let's get rid of the sorted row statement. Let's open up advanced editor. Okay, we are in the advanced editor, and let's copy paste what I have prepared from before. Now this is the same, basically the same thing. We are going to the source local host, we are going to the database AdventureWorks, and then we have a run SQL step. And this step enforces, or gives us the option to enforce query folding by saying value native query, and we have the reference to the step before, and then we have our SQL statement, and in the end we say enable folding true. Okay, if I go false here and I click OK, we will get the same result as before. And if I do a step here, we can see there's no native query option available. So if we go back into the advanced editor and I select true here, we should get query folding. Let's click OK. And nope, we don't. And this is a limitation on using this native query mQuery step, because as soon as the SQL statement gets complex or does anything really that's like a little bit more advanced, it won't work. Okay, so I can show you this by reducing this SQL statement to the select statement. Just delete this. Okay, and I've deleted the rest of the query. So now we only have a select statement on the AdventureWorks status log view, and we have an order by statement, and we have enable folding false. So let's have a look. Okay, this works. That's fine. Let's see what happens if we add true. If now we can query fold, because this is a lot less complex, and now it works. And let's add, let's say we do not want null. Click OK. And now that we can see that we have our native query, yeah. So this still works. So there is a limitation. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with complex SQL statements, the enforcing the query folding. So that's definitely something to look out for. All right, so let's go back and edit this. We say false again so that we have the same result as before. And we copy paste our SQL statement in there. I have to say yes. Okay, perfect. So this is a solution using a SQL statement, but without any query folding. All right, and this brings us to the last step, or the last approach, and this is the direct query mode, where we created a view in the SQL server. And we will just direct query that, and this will solve all our issues regarding big data, real-time data, and so on. So let's go ahead and have a look at how we can do that. Right, for the direct query solution, we need that view. So let's go to SQL Server Management Studio, click New View, click Close, copy paste that statement, run it, and click OK. That's fine. Okay, and we can see here we have the correct view. Okay, so the SQL works. Let's save this, call it SQL View. Click OK. Okay, that's fine. Let's reload this. We have our SQL view. Okay, so let's go back to Power BI and go to transform data, and let's go ahead and create a direct query. So we go to more. This will open up again our options for the data connections. So we'll go to SQL Server Database again, go to again the same thing, local host, and AdventureWorks 2019. We'll direct query, and let's click OK. This will open up. Perfect, and we can see we should have SQL, the SQL view. Let's find it. SQL view. Perfect. Let's click OK. And now we have the same thing, but direct query. And here we have no limitation. We can have as many rows as we want. We have no performance issues because we're using direct query, and everything is based. All the work is done on the server side, and now we also have real-time data with the direct query option. So if we go ahead and close and apply this and load this into our report, and on our report page set the refresh rate Yeah, so we click page refresh, set it to 1 second, and if we would now add all the direct query data, let's use the bottom table for this. Let's go ahead and select again the product ID, the culture ID, the name, the product model, the date. Let me format the state quickly. The date and the status. If we were now to insert more data into the database, this would within 1 second refresh, and we would have the data in near real time, and we can use big data here. So this is a great solution. All right, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I do hope to see you in the next video.